Welcome to the Gen Z Marketer Podcast, where we have marketing conversations and everything in between. Here we talk about marketing, branding, e commerce, and the power of integrated marketing communication. I'm your host, Jamia O'Malley, a strategist passionate and specializing in branding and marketing for e commerce. So it's finally that time of the year. Spotify Wrapped is out, and we are all excited to see how our year in the platform was like. So, in this episode, let's digest what makes Spotify Wrapped an exciting viral campaign that reinforces Spotify's brand awareness and engages its creators and listeners. Before we get to it, don't forget to support the show by following the podcast to get notified on the latest uploads. Spotify Wrapped is a yearly tradition in which users get a recap of what their listening behavior was like in the past year. It shows the top songs, artists, number of hours listened, and more in a story format that can be shared in social media. So, this is something that Spotify users look forward to in the past years and excitedly share and talk about in social media. You even get a playlist of your top songs or the songs that you mostly played in the past year. And it's just a yearly tradition that is really engaging to the Spotify community. So, what makes Spotify Wrapped this year different from the previous years? First, there are new insights added. So listeners can now see their top podcasts, music aura, and the short guessing game on their behavior was also added. So they can also see the number of minutes of their listening behavior as well as how their listening behavior compares to the rest of their country and those who listen to the same artists. So I'm curious what your insights look like. Mine looks very, very interesting, and I'm sure it really varies for each of us based on how our behavior was like in the previous years. And it's really interesting because it also gives us a recap or a view of what our year was like. So sometimes I go back to, let's say, my 2017 Spotify Wrapped or top songs, and then I visit 2018, 2019, and 2020. You would really see what your year was like, what songs were the most commonly listened to, and really what your interests and behavior was like in those previous years. There's really a growth and change for me, and I'm sure it would be the same to you as well and others. Next is that beyond listeners, this year's Spotify Wrapped also highlights creators. So we all see artists. I'm sure if you're following some artists or podcasters on social media, you would notice that they have also shared their Spotify Wrapped insights on their listeners. So they shared their journey, what their listeners are like, and their reach. So, how does this campaign or why does this campaign continue to work and go viral? First, it's because it continuously builds up the anticipation. So, before the 2021 Spotify Wrapped was released, the platform was already teasing about it through email updates, notifications in the platform, and regular reminders that this year's Spotify Wrapped is coming soon. So not only did they build anticipation, but they also made users nostalgic by reminding them to look back on the 2020 Spotify Wrap. So I'm sure if you also, regularly check Spotify, you also got those notifications or reminders in the previous weeks to look back on 2020 and that 2021 Spotify Wrap was coming soon. Another is that the Spotify Wrapped campaign is really in touch with share culture. So, share culture in social media drives trends, buzz, and interest. So, we get to know more about ourselves, other people, and discover new things. So, Spotify stays on top of this by making sure that the Spotify Wrapped visuals and insights are relatable, fun, and interesting. And of course, because it's easily shared to social media and a lot of people are doing it, it's really a chain reaction and everyone is just sharing and talking about it on social media. Next, the campaign reminds us about the power of visual recognition. So the visual assets of Spotify Wrapped is consistent, recognizable, and on brand. So users can still customize what colors they want for the stories or social media posts to be like, but the format and the asset is visually recognizable and easy to associate with Spotify. Next, this campaign really shows how Spotify has adaptive insight. So the insight Spotify Wrap gives creators and listeners has been continuously innovated and improved through the years. No surprise considering how Spotify's algorithm and data is continuously growing and improving for better user experience. They also included podcast listening behavior to the listener Spotify Wrapped insight. So podcasters also have a Spotify Wrap of their own, showing how the platform has adapted with the rise of podcasts and their commitment to grow podcast consumption and creation. Next, we have the power of community. So the whole campaign of Spotify Wrapped is not only recognizable, exciting, and fun, but it also reminds us how Spotify has a community or a tribe of users and creators, and how that community has continuously grown, adapted, and the journey of the community. Not only do we see our listening behavior, but when people share theirs as well, we can see what their journey is like. And for creators and artists, we also see what it's like. So with this initiative, you can recognize the power of the community and how it really inspires others to try new things, new trends, new music, new category. And this is something that Spotify has continuously done, even outside of Spotify Rap, even as a brand as a whole. It really shows us that this community is continuously growing for the better. Now let's talk about what opportunities and gaps are there in the campaign. First, let's talk about the power of fonts. So, Spotify did well in the visual recognizability of their assets, but there was one font choice that was a miss. If you're thinking what I'm thinking, then we're talking about the font on the short story about the top genres that you listen to. If you noticed, it was really congested and hard to read. Maybe it was trying to be like edgy, or maybe for some people they would find it edgy. But I think the visual was a miss for that font compared to the rest of the short video stories in Spotify Rap. Next, let's talk about games. So, in one of the short video stories, there was a short game called Two Truths and a Lie in your Spotify Wrap, in which you could guess which of the choices was false and not a reflection of your listening behavior in the past year. So, I think this is something new and interesting as it makes the Spotify Wrapped experience more interactive. So I feel like there is an opportunity to expand the gaming experience or this experience through filters in social media or maybe other sorts of games or short games. Lastly, another opportunity that I think there is for this campaign is the throwback culture or throwback idea. So since Spotify Wrapped is a yearly initiative, it would be interesting to have a quick insight on how your current year compares to previous years. So even just one short story about it, I think that would make a little bit of a difference. And I get that the focus is for the previous year, and I actually don't mind that because simplified or focused campaigns are actually better rather than cluttered campaigns. But I think there is still an opportunity to create a narrative of your behavior through the years. Like just a little insight that maybe for example, for me personally, my 2021 Spotify rap shows that I listen to a lot of Hispanic songs and artists, which is something totally different from my previous years. My previous years, normally artists like Dua Lipa and Little Mix are on the top, but for some reason for this year they're not. So I think that's a really interesting insight in, that maybe they could create also a short narrative about this, or relate it to your Spotify rap, because it's also showing your loyalty to the platform and how you have evolved with them through the previous year. So it doesn't have to be a big thing. They could integrate it in a small but fun way, insightful way. And I think, who knows, maybe this next year they do something like that. And that's a wrap for this episode. So I would like also to take this opportunity to thank all of you for tuning in for the past year. Want to peek on the podcast Spotify wrap? Check out the Gen Z Marketer podcast on Facebook at Gen Z MKT on Instagram and at www.genzmkt.com.